how to stop taking things personally. I think that we all could benefit from this, and I know I certainly have taken things personally from time to time, and so I'm going to talk about it in this video because there are some strategies that we can use to really help us move through that uncomfortable emotion and become someone who is less likely to internalize things that other people do. My name's Rochelle Walsh. I've been a complex trauma therapist for over 2 decades. My specialty was, again, in EMDR. And I now have an online coaching program where I help women in my Joyful and Present program overcome burnout and overwhelm. So how to take things less personally. First of all, it's important to understand that we all have an inner template, a thing that we filter that our subconscious is always filtering the experiences that we have through. And so we need to always question what it is that we are thinking and feeling, and also avoid being dismissive of our own emotions. So we've all had things happen where maybe we feel a sense of rejection, or somebody says something and it penetrates and goes right to the heart, or that we keep experiencing a similar situation or relational dynamic again and again. And we think, what is it? What is it that I keep experiencing about this that's so uncomfortable? And, if it's relational because of our attachment system and the way that we are wired to long for connection and community, it can be especially a difficult thing to move through. The first thing I want to say that I think is super important is to be able to acknowledge the emotion that we are feeling. Whether we end up feeling sad, rejected, hurt, angry, not being able to experience emotion tends to get us stuck in the story, because if we can't process through emotion in our body effectively, our mind will try to avoid it by going into the story of it. One of the things that I help women with, and that I really try to do on my own, is to be able to really, we've all heard, name it and tame it, label it, but really to be able to not only identify and attach a word to the emotion or the experience that we're having, but to really recognize where we are feeling that emotion in our body. So every emotion is felt in the body, and there's a strong connection between our brain and our body. If we try to move through emotions without recognizing where it is in the body, it's going to stay stuck, meaning it's going to persist longer. And so the first thing we want to do is be able to really identify, I'm sad, I'm lonely, I'm hurt, I feel betrayed, I feel excluded, I'm angry. And just notice the emotion. Now, we're going to talk in a minute about understanding the emotion, but for right now, we first just want to be able to label it, to put a word to it, because God created us to be emotional beings. It doesn't mean that we're always, just because we have peace and joy of the Lord doesn't mean that we are not going to sometimes feel hurt or angry or sad or hopeless. We are going to have some difficult grief. We're going to have some difficult emotions. And so in this video, we're speaking particularly about feeling kind of wounded, taking things personally. So we first want to be able to just say the emotion and notice where we really feel that in our body without trying to go too much into the story. What tends to happen is we have a hard time moving through a difficult emotion, and so our mind goes to telling the story. What happened? What does it mean? When has it happened before? When might it happen again? What else do we need to consider? And really start explaining and ruminating on the events rather than moving through the sensation of the feeling. So we really want to pay attention to that sensation of emotion, but then with the story, we're going to try to not go into that too much, except for then to be very curious about it. And curiosity is different than rumination. Curiosity turns on another part of our brain that actually lowers our stress response. And we might think, well, I'm not afraid, I'm hurt. Okay. But when we are hurt and when we are sad, our brain actually encodes that as being unsafe, right? When we take things personally, it means we feel like somebody has done something to hurt us, or we're not important, or they don't care. And so that codes as a lack of safety in our brain. While we just feel with that emotion and, feel that emotion and say, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling mad, I'm feeling lonely, whatever it may be, right? Or offended, we can then question the story by being curious about it. This is different than dismissing the emotion. Dismissing the emotion is just to say, well, I don't care about that, or it shouldn't matter, or who cares anyway, or just distraction, getting busy. But we are actually feeling into it. And then we are going to start to, initially just feel the emotion and not tell the story, but then we're going to be curious about that emotion. And again, curiosity is different than just ruminating and going over the events and getting more upset and more angry and more hurt. We're going to actually start to question it. And we can ask ourselves some questions like, what am I really longing for here? What is it that's really missing? Where is this hurt coming from? Is this a familiar experience that I have, a familiar sensation? What else does this remind me of? We can also be curious about, is there any other interpretation? If we're taking things personally, then what we have done is seen another person's behavior or felt, and then created a story about what it means about us. And so we can really start to question that. So maybe while we're personalizing it, and making a global assumption about that, we can start to be curious about, are there any other possible explanations? Maybe this is about them. Maybe the way they've treated you has nothing to do about you, that you're not valuable or that you're not important, but that maybe, it's something on their end. So we can be curious and question the story, right? What other explanation is there? How else might I see this? How might this be influenced by what I've experienced in the past, about how I learned about emotions or relationships, or how my model and my expectation guides that? We can also be curious about, would be to decide, is there an action that I need to take? Okay, so we've got feel the emotion, question the story, be curious about that, and then decide on an action. And I think this part is really important because sometimes there is an action we need to take. Sometimes maybe there's a boundary that needs to be spoken. Sometimes there is a thing in a relationship that needs to be spoken, and it requires a bit of vulnerability or intimacy. And that can actually be an avenue to greater intimacy, greater connection, but it's not always easy. It's when we start to feel that things are a personal affront to us, it can be very difficult to move into those conversations. But when we do, we can experience a greater deal of connection and authentic connection because we're being honest. So sometimes that action is deciding to have a discussion. Sometimes that deciding to act might be questioning whether or not the relationship is a healthy one, or maybe it's questioning, do we need to show up differently? What is within my realm of control? What can I do to have a different experience, right? Either in this relationship or in another relationship. So once we start to recognize that we do have options, we have options in how we think about things, and we have options in how we decide to respond to things, then we are bringing this hurtful experience, instead of personalizing it, we're making it something that we can really kind of use as information about how to move forward, how we might be changing and growing. And when we're ready and willing to look at experiences, and rather than just avoiding them or feeding them and nurturing negativity, we can really see, where does this lead for potential to growth. And so, next time you're tempted to take things personally, think about that. Think about feeling the emotion, questioning the story. Are there any reframes you need to make? Is there any belief that you have about yourself that really is getting in the way and is being projected on others? And then decide on an action. Is this an unhealthy dynamic in a relationship that maybe you need to set some boundaries, leave, make adjustments to? Or do you want to show up differently? Is there something differently that you can do to, have a different experience, either in that relationship or in other relationships? Bringing it back to a sense of I have some autonomy in this. I have some control over how I relate, not only to other people, but to my own emotions. Because having the ability to move through emotions really is what builds confidence. And emotional resilience is not that things never hurt, not that bad things never come up, or that people always treat us exactly right, or that we always treat other people exactly right. But it's having the confidence to be able to move through those difficult emotions towards greater growth. So I hope this is helpful. Again, my name's Rochelle. If you like my content, go ahead and subscribe and I'll have more videos. I do have a 90-day program where I help women with a neuroscience-based strategies paired with principles of faith to break free from nervous system dysregulation, overwhelm, burnout. Glad you're here. I have a masterclass link below if you care to learn more. Bye.